Welcome to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. But first, thank you for subscribing to the channel and for all those likes. Today we have 4 great stories, so let's get right into them. Shall we? The first story is called Non-Existent Penalties. Many years ago, I was a freelance software developer. I identified an opportunity with a local company that needed a custom application developed. I submitted a competitive price to write what they wanted in Visual Basic. I would write the code and they would develop all the reporting using the package of their choice. Despite the rest of the world using Crystal reports for Visual Basics reporting, they wanted to use a product that they thought they knew. I got awarded the work and sent them a copy of my standard TNCs, and they sent me a purchase order for the work. My contract specified that there were no penalties for late delivery, but I would provide support for the code for 6 months from delivery. The purchase order stated penalties but no support. I made the mistake of not getting signed off requirements before I started working. The scope crapped, as it always does. They also found that the Windows version of the reporting tool was significantly different from the DOS tool they were familiar with. They decided to seek my advice on what to use instead. Of course, I suggested what the rest of the world used. Halfway through the project, the managing director of the company changed. The new guy was not as amiable, and when the project finally got delivered, mainly because they kept changing their requirements, he decided to invoke the non-existent contract penalties. I said my contract says no penalties, and he replied his purchase order had penalties. I was angry and walked out of the meeting without handing over the code. Overnight I thought about it and returned the following morning to hand over the code as we had agreed. I did not want to give them an excuse to take me to court. I walked in and handed over the code. We then got to talk about the payment. He wanted to deduct 20% from the full cost. So I pointed out that if he wants to deduct 20% as per his purchase order, then he would not get any support. He asked me how much it would cost for the support. Being a reasonable person, I said 20% of the original cost. I walked out with my check for the full amount. The support terms were that I would get informed of any issues by 5 PM Friday. I would then have the weekend to look at the issue and inform them on Monday if I would take more than 14 days to fix the problem. Otherwise, I had to fix all bugs and return the fixed code 14 days after they were reported. If they missed the 5 PM deadline, I would have another week to fix it. Invariably, I fixed all the issues the weekend they sent them to me and then sat on the fixes for 14 days before sending them back. The next story is called Not Eligible. I was reminded of some of the crazy rules at the tech startup companies I have worked at. I was traveling a lot for a startup game company back before Uber was a thing. So if you weren't driving, you used public transportation or a taxi/shuttle service to the airport. I was traveling out of the country every few weeks and had to be at the airport early, so public transportation wasn't an option. My company had a private car and transportation company they used frequently, and I became friends with the owner. I lived about 50 miles from the airport and he offered to pick me up in the early morning and take me to and from the airport for $45 each way. In San Francisco 2010, this was an insane deal. A week after the first time I used him, I was called in by my leadership, stating that the hired cars are only for executives, or else I could pay out of my own pocket and not be reimbursed. I explained that the Bay Area train system didn't run early enough for me to take it and asked if I could use a taxi. They said no, and I needed to drive myself. I told them that mileage, bridge toll and parking at the airport would cost them a lot more than what the car service was charging. I was usually out of town for at least a week. I was told again that the hired car service was only for executives. Fine, time for some malicious compliance. There was more than one way to the airport. So I made sure to take the longest way, adding another 30 miles each way. Airport parking at the time was $20 per day, I believe, maybe a little less. On my first trip after my talking to, I was gone for 10 days. Mileage at 51 cents per mile, $82. Bridge toll, $5. Parking, $200. This actually went on for a couple more trips before I was asked about the expenses. This was one of the few times they realized the rules were stupid and changed things. My company communicated that they were going to start contracting hired cars for early morning commutes to the airport. Great idea, boss. The third story is called Not What I'm Paid For. I used to work for a chain of pubs that loved to have promotions tied up in red tape. At one point in this story, I was technically a server on minimum wage, but doing supervisor work. This had been going on for a while, as the manager hadn't submitted the paperwork. In our country, if you are on minimum wage, your employer has to pay for any time you have to be available for work or required to remain on the premises, not just if you are actively working. The manager would frequently rota me on awful split shifts like 8:30 am to 2 pm, then 5 pm to close. Close was approximately at midnight by the time tills and cleaning was done. Because I was the only supervisor on shift, I was expected to remain available for those middle 3 hours in case I was needed for manager stuff. Now, initially I didn't mind this so much cause of the inconvenience of traveling back home to just come in again. I just chilled out with some free experiment from the kitchen and a good book in the corner of the bar. I did however change payroll if I was expected to jump back into action to add on however long it was. A few weeks into me doing this, the manager noticed. "Why are you down for 14 hours on Thursday? I scheduled you for 12.5. It picked up at 3:30 and the colleague was getting slammed. "But why have you changed payroll?" "Cause that's what I worked." "But you weren't scheduled to work, you choose to. Cause you told me to be available during those hours." "I'm changing it back, you get paid for what's agreed." "What about tomorrow then? I'm on the same split shift." "You'll be paid for when you're scheduled to work. Don't change it again without my approval." "Alright then, have it your way." The next day, bang on 2 pm, I stepped off the bar, grabbed my stuff and walked a few doors down to the local cafe. The server and the chef had my number if they needed me, cause I felt guilty leaving them to it. But they agreed not to let on to the manager exactly where I was, just to say I'd left if he came downstairs from his flat. The server also said she would call him in the first instance if it was busy. I don't think she ever liked someone having to hang around unpaid on principle, cause she was a minimum wage worker too. A warning text preempted his call, and his mood was as you could expect. I confirmed that I wasn't in the building. He demanded a return. I threw the legislation in his face and reminded him I wasn't being paid for those 3 hours, so I wasn't obligated to be on site. He wanted to go back to what I had been doing, but I told him that was off the table. He wants me there for 3 extra hours a day, I'm getting paid for it, even if I've got my feet up. I told him his other option was to sign the promotion paperwork and then the law wouldn't cover me in the same way. It was signed before I got back to the bar. Not long after, I applied for a transfer. The last story is called One Per Tray. This happened yesterday, as I was returning home from my 2-week trip to Germany. The final leg of the flight departed from Paris, where I had this lovely interaction with the agents whom, despite me knowing are not TSA, I still refer to as TSA in my mind. While going through security in the airport, I know the drill. Belts off, jacket off, take the laptop out of my bag. So I submit to the X-ray 4 trays. One with my carry-on, one with my laptop by itself, one with my belt, watch and jacket, and one with my personal item, finger fanny pack. I'm randomly selected for further screening. I have a Lebanese last name and a beard. I'm always randomly selected for further screening. And the agent berates me for putting all my electronics together. I point out that I took my laptop out of the bag, as per standard procedure, and the agent says, screaming at me mind you, that is not enough. I must take out every electronic device from my carry-on and put each of them in an individual tray, and I'm being sent to the back of the line to do so. Here comes the malicious compliance. There are 2 things this French TSA agent is unaware of. The first thing is that I'm a videographer by trade and I was in Europe to cover an event with video footage and interviews. The second thing is that Air France changed my flight times, so my 2 hours layover became a 10 hours layover, which I'm not particularly happy about. So I'm being sent back to the end of the line and I have to submit each electronic item individually? Sure, no complaints from me. With 2 camera bodies, 1 drone, 1 GoPro, 4 lenses, 9 batteries and 2 lavalier microphones later, there is no more space in the treadmill. People behind me are complaining that they will miss their flight because I'm taking so long. There's nothing I can do, I'm just following the orders I received. And at this point I only unpack my photography vest and fanny pack. The treadmill starts moving, some space clears up to put additional trays, and that's when I open my carry-on bag. Again, I'm in Europe for work. I didn't bring any nice clothes or shoes or anything. All my personal effects are in the checked-in luggage. The carry-on is filled exclusively with electronics. I still have 4 microphones, 2 recorders, lights, additional lenses, battery chargers, video monitors, audio monitors, drone controllers. Once I open my carry-on, it's very clear for everyone within eyesight that I'm not even a third of the way done. 1 electronic per tray? Sure thing, I just occupy this entire checkpoint by myself then. The people behind me in line are literally jumping and screaming about their missed flight, to the point the security agents leave their post to control the line. Someone in a non-uniform suit appears and talks to the agent who sent me to the back of the line. That's when the unthinkable happened. The agent comes to me and says there would be no need for me to continue separating my electronics. I could just submit my entire carry-on bag as a single item and they'd examine it further if it seemed necessary. You sure? I asked. Because it's no bother at all. I can keep unpacking here all day long. They insist it's not necessary, but I still have over 20 trays at this point occupying the treadmill. I go through the metal detector, I spend some minutes recovering and repacking everything. And, based on the number of fuming passengers, I like to think I contributed to charge the goal reviewing their stance on x-raying individual electronics. And with that, we end today's video. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories in today's video? I hope you enjoyed the video. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.